What's up, guys? Steven here, and today I want to talk to you guys about Rack System 2. It's done, it's been done for a while. I figure I show you guys some video of what's in the rack and how it's all operating. I changed the filtration around on it just a little bit to test some products out, and that's another thing that I might want to do in the future is do like a product spotlight video showing products that I'm selling on the website and how I use them in my fish room every day. So that might be like another little series or playlist that comes out. But I did run into a problem with the rack system, and it's kind of a decent problem that I have. So I want to show you guys the system and what I plan to do about fixing it. Let's go check it out. Alright guys, I am here in the fish room. Rack System 2 is right here next to me. And let's just go ahead and do a quick overview for those who might not know about the system. Lucas Bretz did a video about the system, and when he was here, it wasn't really complete. It only had a few tanks on it. But let's go ahead and get like an overview. This is the top rack. I'm missing one 10-gallon tank that's going to go right here. Everything's plumbed as far as the drain. The drain's back there. This is the fill pipe for it. I just literally need the tank. The tank that was here I needed for a different project, so I pulled it out. I need to buy a new tank to replace it and drill it for the overflow, and technically it'll be done. But the top rack is 6 10-gallon tanks. These two end tanks are empty. This middle tank had the buffalo head cichlids in it. They moved to a bigger tank because they were basically outgrowing this tank. So this tank's empty. This is some of my Tequila Sunrise. These are Gen 2s. And I don't know if you'll be able to see, but there is Gen 3s in there now. They're spawning in this tank. This is another tank of Tequila Sunrise. These are Gen 2s, and they haven't spawned yet in this tank, but I'm assuming it'll probably be any day now based off of this other tank. The water comes in through all these pipes. There are Matten filters in the back, and I'm using those basically to keep the fish away from the overflow, and it's a mechanical filtration with also biological filtration. So there's going to be bacteria that's in each of these mats, and all the top tanks have that. So I have basically 60 gallons worth of water and 6 Matten filters. So the mechanical filtration is pretty high, and the biological. The water overflows from each tank out the back and then comes down a pipe to the front of the next tank. This is just an auto drip line I have. Every other day I start dripping fresh water into this tank, and it's a central system, so every tank shares the same water. So if I put new water in here, it eventually makes it through the whole system. But the water comes from above down into the next tank. It drips onto the surface to help break up any biofilm, and the water goes from the front of this tank, and the theory is it flushes to the back and then out the overflow that's in the corner. I do have intake sponges on the overflows, and that's to keep snails, shrimp, or fish out of the overflow so they don't get flushed down to the next tank underneath. This tank has my newest guppy line, which is Dumbo-eared Mosaics. And they are breeding in this tank. I have 2 sets of fry. There's 4 males and 5 females. 2 of the females have dropped their fries, so I'm assuming the other 3 will be shortly. I don't know if they're really eating their fry or not in this tank, but there's a ton of hiding spots there's crypts in the front. There's some S. repens, which isn't really a great hiding spot. I got the lava rock pile, and then in the back there's Anubias. This tank is planted. It's Anubias and Jungle Val. Same with this tank. It's Anubias and Jungle Val. Jungle Val is probably one of my favorite plants right now. Both these tanks had shrimp. They are moved out, and these are getting ready for import. I do have a wholesale account now with Flip Aquatics, and I will be going this weekend to pick up some shrimp from him, so I'm keeping these 2 tanks open. This tank's open, and it's bare bottom. And then I have these 2 tanks up here that are staying open for the wholesale. This tank is where the blue lip buffalo head cichlids are. The ones that were up here in this tank. They finally were putting on some decent size for this 10-gallon, and so I moved them down to this 20. And it's just fully scaped with cobblestone. I found a local supply of this, and I can buy it in bulk. There's a lot of the current on this tank I have set really high. You can kind of tell with all the bubbles that are coming down. And the way that I set the current on this tank to be higher is the pipe that goes up to the tank above it. This tank current is higher, so it's a lot higher than the tank next to it, and that's all controlled with the ball valves that are on the back. So the more I open that valve, the more water flow. So I'm purposely keeping the flow higher on this to keep the water pushing quicker through the tank for the cichlids. And they're really cool. They really like these rocks. It's going to be really hard to pick them up without being able to zoom in with this GoPro. But there's, one there, there's one there, and they're all over. I don't really know what my plans are long term for these guys, because I'll be honest, it's not really my favorite fish right now. It's a cool fish. I might try to breed them out and at least get 1 generation out of them, and then pass them along to other people in the hobby. Now all these tanks, they all have intake sponges on the overflows, every single one. I'll show you how all these overflow. So all the 20 longs in the middle rack all overflow into a central drain pipe. So there's a pipe that runs the length of the rack. It's 2-inch PVC, and it basically collects all the water, and then it comes down, makes a 90 and goes this way, and I'll show you where that goes. Alright, sorry for this angle, it's going to be kind of hard to record this, but that 90-degree pipe comes out this way, and then I got this 3-tier storage bin from the dollar store. It wasn't $1, I think it was like $7 or something like that. And it dumps all of its water into the top bin. I drilled a bunch of holes into it. It then drops the water to the second bin, and it keeps going down. The bottom bin's drilled, and then I had this spare 20-gallon long, it's a mesh lid when I used to keep ball pythons. And what I did is I cut it. It's a fit for the outside diameter of the tank. So I had to cut it lengthwise to make it narrow so it would fit inside the lip of the aquarium. What I'm doing is using that basically as a shelf, and it's metal so the water can drip through it. So this allows me to do mechanical filtration on top of already the Manton filters and each intake sponge that's on the overflows. So this is catching all the water. And you can see it's working. This is, I would say medium density. It's not coarse, but it's not the fine polyfill style. And my whole plan is the water is just going to collect all the detritus and whatever particles there are in the water. It's going to clog up, and then the water just kind of starts going to the outside of the pile, basically. And that's what you can see is going on. The second shelf is the same material. I'm just testing this to see how fine of particles can you really pull out of the water with this style filter. And then the third is a fine media pad, I guess. Fine polyfill. And this is brand new. I just put this in today. And it's already starting to collect. You can see where all the drill holes are, because it's starting to collect waste. And this allows me to change the filters out super easily. I just pull the drawer out. I can take the drawer all the way out if I want to, or I just, open it, pull out the media, put new media in. I do have bio balls. I debated on trying bio balls to see, if it did anything, but I honestly don't think I need it. I think I'm going to be just fine with these polyfill pads. So my goal is to run a coarse polyfiber, a medium one, and then either a fine, or swap out this medium one for fine and then run a carbon one just to polish the water clarity. And this is part of the pad I cut. So let's talk about the issue I ran into. And it was an issue I knew I was going to run into when I only had the 3 sets of tanks set up when Lucas was here. And it all involves with the water flow that I have set up in the bottom rack. The way the tanks are is all the water drops to the bottom left, and then the water zigzags through each tank until it gets to the pump. And the theory behind that is I can heavily plant the bottom rows and make it like a sump, where all the plants are going to be pulling all the nitrates out of the water before it gets to the pump, and the pump basically pumps that fresh water back to the top rack and it starts to cycle over. Well, I drilled every tank with 3/4 inch bulkheads, 3/4 inch pipes, so the bulkhead is actually, I think it's 1.5 inches. And after doing the first 3, I noticed that tank 1 would have, max water height, tank 2 would be slightly lower, and then the final tank would be a little bit lower. So what was happening is the pump is pulling so much water, and there's not enough flow through the 3/4 inch bulkheads to keep the water levels like symmetrical or like the same across every tank. When I added the final 2 tanks, I went to 2-inch bulkhead, which is a 2.5 inch hole, so substantially larger. And those 2 tanks maintain the same level no matter what. But now that I have the extra 40 gallons of water on the lower rack, my pump tank, the last tank in the rack, is substantially lower now. So the 3/4 inch bulkheads, which are connecting 1, 2, 3 tanks now, are not flowing enough. And I'll show you guys what that looks like. So this is the last 2 tanks I added to the system. So all the tank water above goes through the, I guess we'll call it the trickle tower, or the filter tower, and then dumps into that tank. This is 2-inch bulkhead. It's quite large. The water is equalized between these 2 tanks, no issue there. The water flows through and then to the back of this tank. In the back of this tank is 3/4 inch. Can you see it? There might be a glare. There's basically a 3/4 inch bulkhead back there. The water goes out the back of that tank, through tubing, to the 3/4 inch bulkhead right here. The water comes through this way, and these tanks eventually will be planted. And my goal was to keep plants in here to filter all the nitrates out, but to also grow to sell them. The water comes from the back forward to this 3/4 inch bulkhead, across to the back of this tank, and then finally to the last one, which I call the pump tank. But if you look, these two tanks are at their max water level. Here's the water level of this tank. Here's the water level of this tank. Here's the water level of the pump tank. The pump tank max fill level is right here. That's what this line is. When the water gets to above this line, it overflows out the back and into the drain sump. The drain sump, I'm pretty sure I already have a video of that. Once that bucket fills up, it flips a float switch and it pumps the water up and out. In case you haven't seen the previous video, this tube that's right here that's running diagonally up the center block, that's a freshwater fill line. If I want to do a massive water change, that's direct 3/4 inch from my water drum system. So that will do a fast water change on that. Currently I just use the drip line, but here's the problem. Since I've added the new tanks, I haven't been able to use the drip line. Those tanks are at max capacity. This tank is not. This tank is at 1/3 capacity, maybe almost a half if you figure this is the overflow. If I put it in feed mode, so I do have that DC pump that's running everything. So if I go ahead and put this in feed mode, the pump turns off. The water keeps running from each tier just for like a minute. Once it equalizes, those will stop running, and then eventually it will stop draining down here. But this water level will start to rise because these tanks, since this is no longer consuming all the water volume in this, all these tanks will equalize out. The problem I have is I could leave the system exactly how this is right now, but this tank in the back, I have all my Anubias, and they're growing great, but the problem is, now I went from submerged grown, they're going to be trying to grow immersed. I don't want that. So the simplest thing to do is just to move them out of here and put them in this tank over here. These lower tanks are for a mono shrimp, and there is mono shrimp in here. You randomly will see them. There's only about 12, but they're in there and they keep all the plants nice and clean. There's no hair algae. You know, it's a happy system. So the only thing I can think to do is move the Anubias over. And I don't know if you guys can hear that. That's an air stone. And that's one of the things I listen for in my room, my fish room, is like you're tuned into normal noises. You don't think about it, but when you hear something different, you know something's wrong. So now that air stone is actually underwater, so it's making the bubbling noise. And the first time I knew I had a problem was when I came in here, I could hear it didn't sound correct. It didn't sound like just water moving. You could hear the actual air, and that's when I realized I had a problem. But right now, since we're in feed mode, you know, our water level was down here. Now it's starting to climb up. This tank's lowering just a little bit because it'll lower as this one fills, but this one will come back up. And then you probably won't be able to tell, but these tanks are going down a little bit. So what I need to do to really remedy this is to switch out the 3/4 inch piping to 2 inch. I'm a little nervous of trying to re-drill these tanks. So I'll have to take these bulkheads out and then re-drill it for the 2-inch bulkheads. And I bought a bunch of them, so I have enough to redo the system. But that's, 2, 4, 6 holes I'll have to drill, and that, I don't know, it makes me nervous. And I guess what I'm nervous about is trying to drill over the open hole that's already there. The other thing I thought I could do, and I would have to drill holes again, is do basically, I guess it would be an equalization line, where in the very top of each tank, I drill smaller bulkheads. So let's say like 1/2 inch, so smaller than the 3/4, as far as high as I can go, and I could do it all in this front, and then just run a pipe and tie every tank together. So it wouldn't be the zigzag flow, but if that tank gets overfilled, it would dump into the next one, and so on and so forth down the line. I think I want to do that anyways, because right now, if I kick up the pump flow, it can't cycle the water quick enough through all these tanks, and that tank on the end will overflow onto the floor. So I have it dialed in right now to where that tank stays all the way filled up without overflowing, but without either upgrading these to bigger tubing or pipes, or going to the overflow like backup. I think I need to do that no matter what, so that way in case there's a blockage, it's kind of like a fail-safe. I'm all about like redundancy, so I think I'm gonna do that anyways. So 1/2 inch bulkheads every one, and then just do T's. So if that tank gets too full, it dumps into the next one, and so on. And that would also keep, if any reason, like a plant dislodges and gets stuck in this pipe, because there's no filters or anything in these pipes. They're just open for maximum flow. Something could technically get stuck in here, and if that blocked flow, this pump would pump up whatever contents are in here, whatever contents are in here. So let's say this is 40 gallons. 40 gallons will get pumped onto this side of the blockage and have nowhere to go except for over and onto the floor. If I have it set to where it will overflow into the next tank, worst case scenario is they all fill up and it will go out the actual overflow of the system to the drain. So now that I'm talking about it to you guys, I know I need to do that system, because that would be a perfect backup for all these. So I need to do it no matter what, and it might alleviate my problems I'm having without having to redo all this plumbing. So that's something I learned. I thought that this would be enough flow, and I was incorrect, and I think it's just restriction. Even though like it's 3/4 inch pipe, you got a 90, a 90, and that's on every tank twice. So it's trying to go through all these 90s, and it's just not good. It's just not good flow. And then suspecting that, or thinking that you haven't seen this system before, this is a Matten filter right here. And this Matten filter was only to keep the Amano shrimp from getting sucked up into the pump. That's all it's there for. And honestly, it's another mechanical filtration and another biological filtration. There's a lot of both of those. There's a lot of mechanical and biological. Alright guys, I really don't have much more to say about this system. This system is pretty much done in my mind, other than fixing the lower rack. I need to get the overflows on each tank installed, and once that's done, I'm done messing with this rack system. Everything's working how I want it to. I haven't really had any issues with it. I've learned a lot. This was my first real big think outside the box as far as running tanks. Rack system 1 is all ran off of air. It's using Manton filters in each tank. It has one air pump that controls all 5 tanks. It has the lift tube in the Manton filter, so that's providing water flow. Maybe I'll do a video, like an update, because the stocking has changed a little bit from probably the last video I've done, but nothing crazy. I do have killifish now. Also, another fish that's in this tank over here, I do have some super red bristlenose plecos. They are super tiny. They're babies I bought from Catfish Town, which is here in Ohio. There's 4 in there, and I hopefully can power feed them, get them big enough, and hopefully not in a year or 2, but breed them. So the next video is Rack System 3. And I'm not going to show you Rack System 3 in this video, because it'll be a separate video. And it's 2 tanks, 55 gallons apiece. And alright, I gotta say it. Shell dwellers. That's it for now, guys. Hopefully you stick around for the next video. If you haven't, please subscribe. I'm trying to release more content as I have time. I'll try to do the spotlight videos when I can. Just spotlighting products I use and I sell. Always check out 614fish.com and use the discount code YouTube at checkout to save 10% off your entire order, including Fluval lighting. So it's going to be probably the cheapest you'll find it online. Until next time, guys, thanks for watching. How it's all working right now, what's in the rack, looks like, uh-oh, scratch that.